When I was in the art classes in Cal State Dominguez, my professors asked me because they found out I was doing a psychology degree, are you going to be an art therapist? What? There's art therapy that exists? Which was great because it opened my mind to reading up about it. I would meet therapists they would be surprised and they're like, oh, how is that related? And I'm thinking, how do you guys not know that it's connected? Now it's become more popular, which is wonderful. But back then it was like, what? It's so cool to see where it's at now. Art has been my best friend. It was always an outlet for me, a way that I was able to express or manage my feelings. So I started really seeing more of the capacity that art had. That's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to be a therapist. I'm just going to go back to school and get my master's degree. One of the things about art, it helps start a dialogue. And rapport is the most important process of therapy because once you establish rapport with somebody, once you have a really good connection, they will trust you and they will be open to exploration or trying anything.
Welcome to Angel City Culture Quest, where art, social justice, and the environment meet in Los Angeles. I am your host, Melina Paris, and I welcome you to this episode. Hello, and welcome to Angel City Culture Quest. Today we are living in a time when funding for the arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, and even smaller local arts organizations are being slashed. In this episode, we are speaking with artist Cora Ramirez Vasquez about her art and psychology practices, from empowering women to informing community. Our conversation today demonstrates how art has the power to serve and to help people. Please enjoy our conversation today. Hi, Cora. Thank you for being here. How are you today?
Hi, Melina. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Glad you're here. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Cora Ramirez Vasquez, and then we're going to get started. Cora is a psychotherapist and an artist. She has been practicing art psychotherapy since graduating from Loyola Marymount University in 2005. She obtained her California Marriage and Family Therapist license and art therapy registration in 2010. She opened her private practice in 2010 and received a doctorate in clinical psychology in 2018. In 2006, she and her husband Ray opened Gallery Azul in San Pedro, named after their child, Harmony Azul Vasquez. They initially opened to showcase their artwork, but then began to invite other artists. Gallery Azul enjoys holding group art exhibitions that focus on informing and educating the community. During her undergraduate education at Cal State Dominguez Hills, Cora wanted to become a professional artist, but she was not sure how she would utilize this degree. About this time, she discovered an interest in psychology and in philosophy. Finding that philosophy would place her in the same dilemma as art, she pursued psychology, which also encompasses much philosophy. Cora continued taking art classes and obtained a minor degree in studio art. She was the first in her family, both immediate and extended, to obtain a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctoral in clinical psychology. Congratulations, Cora. Those are wonderful accomplishments. I like your coming-of-age story. You were an overachiever from the start. In high school, you took AP and college prep classes, and you noted that you not only met, but surpassed the expectations of your parents, who emigrated from Mexico to the U.S. as adolescents. They both met here, they worked hard at establishing themselves, and became American citizens. While you were an undergrad in psychology with a minor in studio art, you mentioned certain professors led you in a surprise direction. Can you talk about what happened?
Yeah, so when I was in Cal State Dominguez, when I was doing my degree in psychology, I figured I was going to do 2 degrees. I was going to do psychology and art. So when I was in the art classes, that's where my professors asked me because they found out I was doing a psychology degree. And they asked me, are you going to be an art therapist? And I was like, what? There's art therapy that exists? So I go, no, I'm just going to do psychology and art, which was great because it opened my mind to learning about it and reading up about it. So
Mm.
when I graduated with my psychology degree, then the studio art degree, I worked in the field of case management and domestic violence, and then kind of went into that world indirectly. So I would read more about it. But thanks to them, they exposed me to that. And it was interesting, though, the irony that the psychology department, nobody ever talked about art therapy. And me knowing so much about it now, I can't believe that they never brought it up.
It's
So interesting. I'm like, why would they? But even when I started studying it, I would meet therapists that where they would be surprised and they're like, oh, how is that related? And I'm thinking, how do you guys not know that it's connected? Now it's become more popular. Everything's art therapy this or here, this is art therapeutic through therapy through art, which is wonderful. But back then it was like, what? That's not related. So it's
so
so cool to see where it's at now.
it totally makes sense. It seems like just the next natural step, especially given your two majors. I'm glad they mentioned that to you. In your bio, you've written, quote, art is an ever evolving and ongoing part of my life. It is my cathartic expression and the place in which I sublimate any residual from my clients and the world, end quote. Can you explain to us how does this manifest in your day-to-day life?
Art has been my best friend. It was always an outlet for me, a way that I was able to express my feelings or manage my feelings. So once I realized what it was doing for me, man, that was just amazing. So graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology and then with studio art. And I started working with a women's shelter of Long Beach. So I was volunteering for them. So once I graduated, I got hired on. And then that's when I really started doing the art groups in the evening with these women. So there I started off working as a case manager and a legal advocate. That would be the daytime work. And then in the evening, I'd come back and volunteer, right? More time, even though I was working already, and then do the groups with the women. So I started really seeing more of the capacity that the art had. So that was one of the things that really kind of helped me decide that art is so important and I really want to do more with this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so working there was pretty harsh too. These women are escaping an abusive situation. So I'd go to court with them and kind of experience some of the abuse that they experienced with these abusive men. I would
Mm.
be there, try to comfort them, just support them, and try to empower them, and just so that they would feel comfortable really being in front of a judge and talking about their experience.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so doing that too, I was part of the domestic abuse response team with the Long Beach Police Department. So after a domestic violence situation, we'd go to the home and try to see if these women were wanted to get shelter so they could leave an abusive situation.
Mm.
Or I'd go to the hospital and the same thing, talk to these women and just try to explain to them that there were options, there is a way out. And many times that's the best time to talk to them because they've just experienced a trauma and they're seeing how scary and maybe life-threatening it is. So that's why we would go during that time. And many times, yeah, we would be able to convince them, we'd take them into shelter. And it was cool to be able to do the art groups with them. Knowing this about them, I'd have them create masks or I'd have them draw. And the stuff that they were creating, my jaw would drop. And then I was like, you know what? I really need to learn more about it so I can use it appropriately. At that time, I was reading more art therapy books. That's when I decided, you know what? I'm going to be a therapist. I'm just going to go back to school and get my master's degree. So that was what
Wow, that's really
helped me decide,
inspiring.
make that decision. So
Yeah,
just the empowerment of women using art as healing and then realizing like, you know what, I really want to do more of this. This is so powerful.
it
And I want to
is.
be an advocate for this. I want people to know about this.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. Like you said, empowering women and at a time when they're probably most vulnerable and they can then in turn express themselves through the art. It
Yeah.
helps them
And
grow.
because I saw how it was so cathartic for me, how it was so helpful. So that was where it came from me. It was like, you know what? I want them to experience what I'm experiencing
Yeah.
without realizing all the healing. And then to this day, I still use art as when I'm creating. Same thing. I'm releasing stress. I'm releasing whatever else is in me in my creative process. And I feel it the next day. I feel really relaxed and more focused at work. Being a therapist, you need create for intervention, sometimes to help people see things differently. So this kind of stuff it really helps sometimes. Tell them something and they will be like, oh, I never would have thought of that. Or, oh, wow, what a different way to look at it, which is always great. I think in just that whole process, I'm sure I could dissect it like for months and find new more and more stuff, but it's
Yeah,
definitely in there. It's an integral part of my life.
that's great. So moving in towards art, you and your husband opened Gallery Azul in 2006, and you're coming on 20 years. It's unbelievable. Next year. The story of opening the gallery was a kind of a synchronicity, or you called it a necessity, because it was a commercial space. And your landlord said that you have to have some kind of a business. And you and Ray used it as an opportunity. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so being that Ray and I are both artists, and then San Pedro had a art community, we were like, oh, well, that's easy. We'll just open up an art gallery.
No
So,
brainer.
so of course, we didn't have a business plan or anything. Yeah, we're just gonna open up an art gallery. Our first show was November of 2006, and it was for Dia de los Muertos. So we
Mm.
decided to just introduce Dia de los Muertos. It was a great opportunity to invite other artists, bring awareness to the community about this cultural event, give opportunities to other artists as well. That was our first show. And then after that, we were like, okay, we'll just make art. And then we realized that's not practical. We can't make that much art every month. So then we decided to start inviting artists and maybe have solo shows with other artists or do group shows. We really love having group shows, just creating themes maybe that are important in the community, or just themes that are going to educate the community or expose the community to something different. That's always been fun. So we're like, oh, what should we do this year? We'll plan ahead and think of shows. It's been kind of like that. Have shows, do art.
It's interesting because you're a therapist and he has an education background. So you guys are just perfect to do this with the exhibitions and gathering the other artists to contribute and coming up with an idea to help inform community on
Yeah.
whatever it is, traditions or history or issues, could be anything. You've done so many types of things like that. So it's wonderful to have you in the community. And about informing the community,
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome. In your shows at the gallery, you write very detailed exhibition labels for artists' works and you strive to share information. Do you ever think that you might have a book in you waiting to be written?
You know what? I actually do. I have a few books that I'm working on. They're just all these little side projects that I have. I have these piles of my books. So one of them is a couples therapy book. My vision is using the couples, and the theme would be 10 simple rules of having a healthy relationship. It would be like a coffee table book, just with the
Hmm.
images, the couples. I did a series of paintings 1 year, and I think I sold most of them. I think I probably kept only like two. I took pictures of them because I already had that idea. I was like, okay, I'm going to use it because it's going to be a book, and each couple will be doing something, and it'll be a tidbit of the language of love, how to live it the right way. That's one of my ideas. The other one is interviewing couples that are considered to be eclectic, interviewing them and maybe creating portraits of them and just talking about what works for these couples that are non-traditional. Many times there's this focus on this tradition and it has to be, there's this attachment to
Yeah,
that where sometimes it doesn't work out. So we need to maybe think differently about relationships sometimes too.
exactly.
And of course, finding what works for you. And then right now, my series that I'm working on with my portraits of my icons and legends, I'm going to do a book of my artwork. For example, I recently sold of Anthony Bourdain, and then I read up about him and kind of did a video assessment of him and just my thoughts about what might be going on and then what made him iconic or legendary. So it's kind of an exploration. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the portrait and then the write-up on the other side. So that's going to be that book. And that'll probably be a few editions because that artist, it's ongoing. So I'm going to be,
Right. You've been
yeah, I
doing
have
that
so
for a
many
long
ideas on
time.
portraits.
How long ago did you start that
Yeah, I
series?
have. I started working on it. Man, you know what? Facebook is so great at reminding you like how old you are. So I think it was like maybe almost like I know almost like 10 years ago I probably started them. And it just
Wow.
started with it started working on it and I would put them aside. I work on various pieces at the same time. So many times I'll work on some and then kind of like put it aside because yeah, I think I need a break from these. So then I go back and then I'll work on something else or I'll have another idea for another piece. So I'll start that one. But yeah, this is an ongoing process. So I still have like
Yeah.
a few that are in process, a few that are going to be processed. So that's going to be another book too. And then of course Ray and I were going to do a book on our gallery just since 2006 and all the shows we've had. So it'll be a really great just to kind of immortalize the gallery and just
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
now when we look back at our gallery, we're like, wow,
It's a huge body of
so
work.
yeah, it is. You know what? And when we start looking at it, like, wow, we did how did we? When we meet new people, new artists, how did we even do all this? Because we're working full time. We had a little child,
I
and
know.
yet we were doing this.
Yeah,
So
well, you
I don't
love
know
what you
how we did
do.
it. So
You love it. Yeah. That's great. So you've got
yeah,
the Day of the Dead couples, the eclectic couples, the real life eclectic couples, and the icons and
yeah,
legends portraits. Those three, and then a book
yeah,
about the gallery that you and Ray will do together. That's so exciting. And I can't wait to see
yes.
them. So good to know. What I found really remarkable is that you noted you're in a good place with your professional goals now. Your goal is being the best of your craft and then merging your psychology and your art worlds. And you referred to it as the unconscious and the conscious of using your assessment skills to explore your topic. And then you just create. Can you describe what you mean by that a little more?
That seems so complicated. So consciously, I'm
Yeah.
focusing on creating, I'm researching, I'm reading, I learn about them. I use my clinical skills as a therapist. When I meet my patients, for example, I get to know them. I got to know their history, their lives, what has helped them create who they are today, what traumas, so that we can start kind of helping them. I'm using the same process with my art. So then when I'm reading up on these icons or legends that have passed away, what makes them so iconic, so legendary, right? What's the big deal with these people? So then I read up on them, I learn about them. If they're musicians, I'll listen to their music. It's like Nipsey Hussle. I never listened to this guy's music. And once I started reading up about him, and I'm like, God, this guy was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And then his music, and I'm thinking, I actually really like his music. But see, you never know. We're like, oh, I don't listen to rap. And then here I'm listening to this guy. Now he's part of my Spotify list, I'm a big new waves 80s person. So having him is like paradox, but it's really cool. So now I listen to Tears for Fears and then suddenly Nipsey Hussle comes on. So it's kind of fun. But going back to this whole process where I'm doing that. So that's the conscious part of it, right? So I will read quotes, whatever. So once I feel like I have a good sense of their identity and who they are, that's where my planning process starts with the painting. So once again, I'm consciously going into the painting, but as I'm working on it, many times this is where I start having these ideas. I'm like, you know what? I think this represents this better or this, so I go into the zone where I stop thinking about it and I just start creating this.
Mm.
So the unconscious part, like I said, it's always there. Everything we do is influenced by our unconscious. So we can be consciously creating something, but the unconscious is also at work, somehow influencing or impacting what we're doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be creating for hours and Ray will show up. Hey, oh, you're still here. I go, oh yeah, what time is it? And then it's like,
I
I can
like
stay up till 2 and
doing
I'll
it.
pay for
Yeah.
it. So, which
I
is not
like
good.
the example that you
Uh,
gave about when you did the Anthony Bourdain piece. You said this guy's brain was on fire and he was always thinking. So you searched for a sky that looked like fire.
yeah, apparently his brain was always active. This guy couldn't relax.
So I just want to give people a
Yes.
image of what you're talking about with the unconscious. That's really exciting. And going back to Nipsey Hussle, you talked about why people really, really respected him and all he did for the community and all the love he had. So these are the things that come across in the paintings that you're doing for the icons. So that's really exciting.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Time is valuable when good. Please don't direct me to the fact. I'm giving you a minute, or else I'll turn my back.
If you're just tuning in, today we're speaking to artist Cora Ramirez Vasquez. Thank you for listening.
Time is valuable when good. Please don't direct me to the fact. I'm giving you a minute, or else I'll turn my back.
Hello, folks. This is your host, Melina Paris. As Angel City Culture Quest begins its 4th year, we are dedicated to bringing you quest-worthy inspiration. With so much to cover in the Harbor region and Los Angeles in art, books, film, music, activism, and more. It's a challenge that I'm honored to embrace, discovering and bringing you the inspired stories and works of many different artists. A major highlight of 2024 was to present our video episode in front of a live audience, Consciousness Through the Lens of Abstraction, featuring esteemed artists Marie Thibault and June Edmonds. You can find that on our YouTube. That was a huge push, and we did it with the help of your support. I'm so grateful. Exciting developments are happening. Stay informed by liking, subscribing, and following our updates, featuring more great artists and authors, the latest in important documentaries, filmmaking, and more. And if you're able, please join me in this quest with your support. Think of it as a cultural tip jar. I would be honored to have your support to further my ability to bring you the powerful works of these artists and others and the cultural content that you crave. To donate, please go to patreon.com/Angel City Culture Quest. There you can find all of our past episodes. Thank you.
Time is valuable when good. Please don't direct me to the fact. I'm giving you a minute, or else I'll turn my back.
So, as far as art, as far as the psychology, can you describe what you do as an art therapist?
As an art therapist, I'm doing psychotherapy, but you will integrate art into the mix when I find that it might be really helpful for them. I don't always use art, but I've used it as much as I can. So sometimes just as a catharsis, just for people to use it to release stress. So sometimes I'll notice that patients come in and they're anxious. Or they're
Mm.
like, well, I don't know where to start. They're overwhelmed. So I'll put a paper in front of them and some pastels or some color pencils. And so they can kind of just doodle. It just helps kind of ground them a little bit as they're talking. And it's pretty neat sometimes. Sometimes they'll create something and we'll look at it afterwards. And I go, hey, so before this 5 minutes, let's look at what you drew. And then that's pretty neat because they'll create something and they're just thinking they're just drawing. And many times, like I said, it has something to do with who they are. So we'll explore, like, well, what do you think you made 5 flowers, for example? And they're like, I don't know, just like flowers. And, and then we'll look at like, we were talking about your siblings today and, there's 5 of you, right? And they're like, yeah. And then that'll kind of
Yeah.
open up a little dialogue, which is great. So it's one of those that can be an entry to something. Also, as an art therapist, I teach my patients how to use the supplies because they're not artists. They don't know how to use art supplies. But I'll give
Yeah.
them a little lesson. You can do some cool things with chalk pastels if you know how to use them. So which gives them a little confidence. So they'll leave there with something new that they've learned, or it opens up possibilities for them. I have patients that started doing ceramics now because they would do clay in
Oh,
session
that's neat.
and squeezes or talking. And I'll notice too, because many times too, I'm observing too their body, their behaviors.
Mm.
And if they're getting upset or tense, you'll hear them like smacking the clay, like, and I'm like, uh-oh, someone's releasing something. So
Uh,
things like that. So I get a lot. They're creating, but I'm watching them. Sometimes I'll have them do a collage just to open up dialogue as well. Sometimes with new patients, we'll do 5 images. I have a collage box of images that I cut out, and they'll go through them. They'll pick 5 images, and then we'll talk about them. And every image, of course, they chose it for a reason, but they may not be consciously aware why. But as we start talking about them, I go, oh, wow, I noticed that you picked this road. Tell me about this road. Like, well, I just think I just don't see any hope or I don't see this. It'll open up. So, because that could be depression. I had one patient one time choose a bed. And then in which I was like, oh, you have a bed. I go, so are you having some issues with sleep? And then she was like, yeah, I can't sleep. So once again, it'll help me kind of ask and explore. They also can help with trauma. I have clients that had lost somebody. So we started creating a little ofrenda, a little altar in memory of this person. And as they're creating this altar, they're talking about how they feel, the grief. So it opens
Mhm.
up this conversation and we start balancing with also happy memories about this person. Tell me, oh, what was your favorite food? Oh, it was this. And wow, when was the last time you guys went to eat? And so they're talking and they're not crying as much. They're just like able to
Sharing. Yeah.
use this kind of cathartic, also once again, there's some feeling happening when there and they're talking about, yeah, we used to love going to eat pizza or whatever. If I didn't have the art, I probably would still get to some of this stuff, but it might take a little longer. So the art is very personal for them. Sometimes I can kind of tell certain things about art, but we don't make assumptions because I could be wrong too. And what do you think about this? Or what does this mean to you? Or why do you think you chose that? Or why did you think, so
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
So, as you're reaching the milestone of 20
Yeah.
years at Gallery Azul, you are also now in a space where you've mastered how to fuse your creative process in your profession of psychology. Can you talk about that sweet spot that you've attained?
Wow. When you're young, you want to do a lot in this stage in life where I'm like, wow, of course we're still young, but just this whole aspect of narrow down, this is the area where I realize this is what I love. And then the ability to fuse this. So now my ideas are flowing. I'm working on a series of Erickson's stages of development, our lifespan. Once again, using the conscious unconscious process of what would that look like as a painting, each stage. So you have the birth stage, you have the stage from ages 1 to 3, just all the different stages. And once again, what would that look like as a painting? So that's one that I'm working on right now that's ongoing. I did another series on the process of grief. Each one was a skull. So once again, to promote conversation and dialogue about death, life and death, appreciating life. I'm always having ideas. As a therapist, we're always trying to read and be updated with all the latest stuff, understand trauma, how to help people. There's so much. But once again, I have to find a balance, right? Because it can impede my creative process. But I'm working on also affirmations. Positive affirmations are really helpful to people. It helps kind of change the brain chemistry. So I'm thinking of masks with different affirmations so people can put on this positive mask. Because sometimes we get attached to very negative views or we beat ourselves up, especially if you kind of were raised with that kind of upbringing. Sometimes you have parents that tend to be very negative or very
Yeah.
anxious and they don't mean any harm, but it comes out like that. So then the child becomes an adult who's very negative and very anxious and can't see the positive in anything. The glass is always half empty. So
Mm.
now positive affirmations can help you reset your thoughts as well, can create new connections in our brain. So that's that where my brain's like, ooh, what can I do? So that once again, multiple projects
Yeah.
aside, and then suddenly I'll be driving and I'll have an idea and I know what I'm gonna do. So then I have to come back and write it down so I
Yeah.
don't forget,
I like that.
put it
The
in that pile and work on it. So
I like the positive affirmation masks. And you said it changes the chemistry. I didn't realize
yeah,
that. It makes
it
sense. That's great. So you did touch on it about two questions back, speaking about art therapy. But is there any example of an art intervention that really worked that you could share with us with one of your patients?
it's funny because it's a great question, but it's a complicated question. So one of the things about art, it helps start a dialogue. And rapport is the most important process of therapy because once you establish rapport with somebody, once you have a really good connection, they will trust you and they
Yeah.
will be open to exploration or trying anything. If I can get a patient to trust me enough, then interventions work because they're more committed. So now we're talking about more measurable stuff. Well, how do I measure it, right? Many times it's about going back to the beginning and into now and looking at that. When I was thinking about that question, I thought about, you know what? There is one that always sticks to me too, which is funny. And thinking about, did it work? I believe it did. I had a teenager that was referred to me. This is when I was still an intern and I was the art therapist in the clinic. They would send me everybody who didn't talk, which were pretty much all the teenagers.
Mm.
So I would get, oh, this girl doesn't talk, so send her to Cora. All right, well, I get the kids that don't talk because I do art. So I remember I had this kid and she sat in there. She was very defiant and sitting there. So I pulled out the collage box and the word box. I have a word box too, where I cut out words and put them in there. So I put him there and I brought out a white piece of paper. It was like 11 by 18, big old paper. And I'm sitting there like, well, if you don't want to talk, that's fine. I go, but if you want to maybe use the words or images to create maybe a collage to share maybe what you're feeling right now. So she was sitting there and we were sitting there for a while. This is where it's like you got to learn how to be comfortable with awkward silence because you're like, as a therapist, we're used to that. So she goes into the word box and then takes out the word world and then she puts it in the middle of the paper. And then she just looks at me. And then so I respond. This is where, as a therapist, sometimes I just go into that. I go, wow, it's a lonely world. And oh my gosh, this girl. And from there, this girl wouldn't stop talking. And then I would tease the other therapist, like, you guys supposedly they don't talk. They won't stop talking with me.
That's
So
great. I love it.
it's
Using the
one that I've
word.
never forgotten. And this kid, but she was a cool kid. She was really troubled. She had a hard life. She just wanted to be heard, and she just didn't think anybody cared. And I think worked with her for about a year. She was just one of my favorite kids. So
That's
I
nice.
really loved my Defiant kids.
That's wonderful. You zeroed right in on that. That's an amazing story. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So, Gallery Azul has just closed the exhibition titled Diverse Perspectives. And then coming up on June 5th, it will open Música, Musas y Muertos.
Música, musas y muertos. So not bad. You did pretty
Thank
good. It was
you.
close.
Can you tell us a little bit about that show?
Yeah. So this show includes artist David Martinez, and of course it's going to be myself and also Rain Vasquez. We've known each other for a few decades. So David's one of the artists that we met while doing other art shows as well. So thanks to the art world, we became really good friends, and we're the hermanos of the art world. So we first exhibited together at Picture This Gallery in Long Beach, and then since then we've exhibited, like I said, in different areas. So David is currently living in Colorado. He's
Mm.
originally from East LA. They have a small gallery over there too that they opened up. So we had invited him to show with us for a while. So finally he agreed, but he asked us to collaborate with him. So of course we're like, well, okay, we'll do it. As long as we're going to have him, we'll collaborate. We're so excited to have him here. We were brainstorming like, what do we want to focus on? We started with Música, Musas y Muertos. So música is about the musical influences from our time that inspired us and other generations. Once again, iconic music. Musas are the muses from our lives that inspire us all, right? Who are our muses? So once again, it's very personal. So it'll be interesting to see my muses versus Ray's muses versus David's muses. And
Yeah.
then muertos, those that have passed away but have left a legacy. It'll be interesting to see. These are three artists, three perspectives.
I love your shows. They're so unique. They really are. And I encourage people to go check them out as often as you can. They're right in the heart of downtown San Pedro. Can you please tell us where we can find you?
Our gallery is located at 520 West 8th Street in San Pedro. We have a website, galleryazul.com. We also have Instagram, Gallery Azul. So pretty easy to find. And then for my prior practice, I have my website, cora-ramirez-vasquez.com, and my Instagram handle, corarv.
Okay. Well, this has been great, Cora. I really appreciate your time. And just to reiterate, this conversation is a good example of why art is important. And I'm so glad to have shared it with you, Cora. So thank you.
Thank you, Melina. I'm really grateful that you chose me to interview. And I'm so happy to provide whatever insights that I can.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.